Greetings! I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to show you how I painted this Oberst Kurt Steiner! You have to say it like that, Steiner! Or else. The figure is meant to represent Michael Caine's character, Steiner, from the movie The Eagle Has Landed, and is a metal 28mm scale figure from Warlord games that I've had sitting around for a while. I did try to find it in Warlord's store, but it seems as though it's no longer available from their site, so you may or may not be able to obtain a Steiner of your own. I haven't done my research. Anyway, there's no assembly required, so let's just get right into painting. First, I give Steiner some primer, in this case black Steiner Res primer. It's kind of hard to see the detail on camera because it's black, so let's add some colour. I base coated the pants with Vallejo Model Color German Fieldgrey, and I was trying to avoid getting this colour on the jacket. For colour inspiration, I'm using a picture of Steiner from Warlord's site, which is still available in an article about the rules involving Steiner. I'm also using a couple of frames from the movie, and my previously painted Blitz Germans, since this figure is likely to be used as their commanding officer. Painting the pants is pretty quick and easy, and for the most part I was able to get this colour on nice and neatly, without also painting the boots and jacket. I then dry brushed the pants with a mix of roughly 50-50 Fieldgrey and Model Color Buff, which I applied quite gently. I'm not airbrushing so I can't spray directly downwards, but I am trying to dry brush in such a way that the highlight represents light from above. Again, I was trying to avoid the jacket, but it's going to be black anyway, and really it's not going to be too hard to go over any unwanted spots of pants colour. Next, why not live dangerously and paint the skin? I base coat this with AK Interactive Base Flesh, which is from the Flesh and Skin Colors set that I've had sitting around for about 100 years. This is pretty simple, just apply the colour to the parts that are skin. Because this isn't a huge figure, a very small brush is a good idea for this kind of thing, particularly when you're trying to avoid painting the surrounding areas. Painting the skin at this point might be setting myself up for problems later on, but I'll deal with any problems that come up when and if they do. I'm kind of winging it, painting this skin. I think the skin has been fairly different on pretty much every figure I've done so far, which to be honest isn't that many. Anyway, once the base flesh coat is down, and I'm pretty happy with its colour, I figured shadow tones would be a logical next step. I used AK Interactive Shadow Flesh to create shadow on the flesh. I carefully apply this around the eyes, under the nose and chin, on the underside of the hands, in between the fingers, and anywhere else I think might be a little bit darker. I figured it might be better to do the shadows before the highlights, which come next. First, I used AK Interactive Light Flesh. I apply this to areas that are more likely to be lit up by the sun. The tops of the ears, nose, chin and cheeks, and across the tops of the hands, places like that. I'm a bit rough with it, and it doesn't look great up close, but it's not really meant to. I'm painting this using my arm's length as the viewing distance. It is a gaming model after all, and is meant to be viewed at a distance. Once I'd done that highlighting, more highlighting seemed to be in order. For this I used AK Interactive Highlight Flesh. Who would have thought? I apply this to some of the areas I just hit, but lighter. And even though I was quite light with it, I think it turned out a little bit too bright. So I decided to apply some Army Painter Flesh Wash. This obviously goes on the flesh, hence the name. This was diluted roughly 2 parts flesh wash to 1 part water. I didn't really want to dry brush the skin, but after the wash it was a little bit darker than I wanted, so I figured nuts, I'll dry brush it anyway. I used the AK Interactive Light Flesh again here, because I didn't want to have to darken it down again. This colour seemed just right. I was happy enough with how it turned out, and I think it might be the best skin I've done yet. It's not quite a perfect match for Steiner in the movie, but I stopped caring about that pretty quickly. I'm sure there's going to be somebody who thinks, "You should have painstakingly replicated the exact skin tone." And to them I say, shh, no. Next, hair, which you'll also find is not particularly screen accurate. I started with model colour German camouflage beige World War II as a base, which I carefully painted onto the hair, which is unsurprisingly what you do when you're painting hair. There's not really a whole lot of hair to paint, which is partly why I'm not so worried about it. I highlighted this with model colour dark sand, which isn't really all that dark. Then I figured adding a wash would be just what the doctor, or the hairdresser, ordered. I used a little bit of undiluted Army Painter light tone here, and that seems to have done exactly what I wanted it to. I didn't feel like it was worth spending too much time on the hair. Then I painted the gun strap and pistol holster. For this I used AK Interactive red-brown leather, because I really like that colour. I think it's nice. Warlord's painted example of Steiner shows a more beige coloured strap, but I preferred the leather colour, and who's going to stop me? Obviously I'm being as careful as I can here. I don't really want to have to do any touch-ups on areas that I've already painted. I mean, who does? Once that's done, I make a mix of roughly 50-50 red-brown leather and model colour buff, and use it to apply a highlight to the edges of the strap and various bits of the holster. I probably could have used something straight from the bottle for this, but I was too lazy to find a colour, so I just made this quick mix. Next I painted the shirt. For this I used Vallejo Model Colour London Grey. Not a whole lot of the shirt is visible, so being careful is a very good idea. At the neck is where the most care was needed. I don't want to get any grey on that flesh now. At this point I'm not worried about the black at all. I'm going to have to touch it up quite a bit anyway, so now it's got grey on it. The shirt is barely visible on the left wrist, and not at all on the right one. The hat is also painted with this colour. I'm still trying to be quite careful here, but obviously this is the easiest area to put this colour on, so it gets done fairly quickly. I think so far it looks okay. Clearly it's a bit messy, but then that's usually the case for works in progress anyway. Next I take some Vallejo Model Air black and painted the Iron Cross medal. This is way too tiny to do neatly, so it's not perfect. But I don't worry about it too much, and continue using the black to tidy up all of the areas of the jacket, boots, and the black parts of the hat. This isn't especially challenging, though there are definitely areas I'm going very slowly and carefully, mainly around the neck. Having done these touch-ups has made the model look much better, at least in my opinion. Next I take some Vallejo Model Colour gunmetal and paint the belt buckle. It's a small touch, but I noticed the character in the movie had a metal belt buckle, and I thought it would be a nice touch. Then I made a mix of roughly half model colour gunmetal and half model air black, and I used it to paint the gun. I'm no gun surgeon, but this looks to be a Sten gun rather than a German one. Having not actually seen the movie in about 100 years, I'm not really sure how much significance this has. At any rate, I was careful with how I painted the gun, and I'm even more careful with how I painted the white part of the medal. I used Vallejo Model Air white here, and not wanting to mess it up by going too far with the white, I only applied the faintest hint of it here. If you look closely, it doesn't look right at all. At arm's length it's barely visible, so I think this is fine, and it gives a slight hint that it's there if you happen to get close enough to see. If you want to spend 20 hours trying to get the Iron Cross right, go right ahead. Personally, I value my time, and don't really see any value in having something that I probably won't ever see on the table. Then I use the same white paint to paint the white detail-y bits on the hat. There are raised details here, I'm not sure what they're called, but they're raised up and that does help quite a bit. My results are still not perfect, but they look the part from a distance, and that's what matters to me. Next I do a little bit of dry brushing with model colour black grey on the jacket. This is just to add a little bit of colour variety to it. I'm not going for extreme highlights by any stretch of the imagination. I decided that dry brushing wasn't cutting it, and was risky to do close to the skin and such. So I used a regular brush to add some little bits of black grey around the cuffs, collars, and other black bits like the boots. It's a bit subtle, but it is there. After that, I get the model colour gunmetal out again, and add some edge highlights to the gun. I'm trying not to go overboard with this, because I don't want it to be especially shiny, but this does add some interest. It picks up the light really well on camera, but in real life the highlights are a bit more subtle. Next, I figured why not apply an all-over wash with Army Painter Strong Tone, which was mixed roughly 50-50 with water. The idea here is to create a look of slight dirtiness, and also to darken up some of the recesses and folds. I tried to avoid the skin, but I did manage to get some of this on it, though I wasn't really that worried about it, and I don't think it made any negative impact. I then applied a coat of gloss varnish. I don't plan on doing any enamel or oil work, but I am hoping this will protect the acrylic paint anyway. After all, it is a metal model, and metal models are prone to chipping quite easily. And once that had set, I applied matte varnish. And with that, the Warlord 28mm metal Steiner is now completed. It isn't based, obviously, but I just didn't feel like making a base for it right now. I do have at least one other German figure to do, and I would prefer to make multiple bases in one go, rather than doing multiple instances of single bases. Anyway, I'm quite happy with how this figure has turned out. I don't often do figures, and they're not really my favourite thing to paint. That's not to say I didn't enjoy painting this one. It was an enjoyable process, and I did have fun trying another iteration of painting skin. Like I said before, I think it's my best attempt so far. It does look a little bit nightmarish up close, but when you hold the model out at arm's length, I think it looks quite good. It should look quite nice on the gaming table as well. Hopefully it's good and clear that he's in charge with his nice black jacket. He's also wearing different coloured pants to the rest of my painted Germans, so there is that as well. Either way, I'm quite pleased with how Steiner has turned out. It's by no means a complicated paint job. There's no camo pattern or anything like that. This, combined with there only being one figure to paint, means this was a pretty quick little project, which is pretty much what I wanted. It was just nice to get something painted fairly quickly. I am generally pretty slow at painting, partly because I like to be deliberate and careful, and partly because I'm unable and unwilling to paint all day long. That's just the way I paint. It's okay to paint at your own pace. That's probably obvious to most people. Anyway, if you're interested, there's a list of all the paints I've used in the description below. Obviously, if you are painting your own Steiner, you can use whatever colours you like, and I would encourage that. I feel like painting is more satisfying if you pick your own colours and make your own choices, rather than just doing what somebody else has done. Of course, it is nice to have suggestions as somewhere to start. I might be waffling a bit now. What do you think of this model and the paint job I've given it? Let me know in the comments below. Have you got your own Steiner or some other fancy German commander? If so, feel free to come and share pictures with us over on Discord, the link to which is also in the description. If you haven't done so already, why not subscribe, follow, ring the bell, become a patron or YouTube member, and all the other things you do on the internet. And if you're feeling really helpful, why not share this video with your friends or anybody you think might get something out of it. Links to all of my things are in the description below, and as always, I shall return soon. So until then, be excellent to each other, and thanks for watching. Farewell.